dating is for the purpose ultimately of marriage, finding a spouse. So that's the first thing, is talk about dating and talk about its purpose.
Because they will not hear this from any other area except from you.
Yeah.
Hopefully not ever broach the subject of dating as this is important for you to use this time to get to know this person so you can make a well-informed decision about marriage. There's no connection there. Parent, grandparent, youth worker, pastor, student, whoever is listening right now.
Every human being on the face of this planet, listen in.
We are quickly approaching our first Maven conference of the year. It is coming up quickly in Southern California, is our first one. It's February 22nd, and we want to encourage you to come out to the Maven conference for a day of equipping, training, thinking through some really important topics, equipping yourself to live in this culture, in this time and place. And so it's February 22nd. It's all crammed in one day. And Southern California is a great place to be in February, where it's super cold in other places. You can come here and go to the beach.
Yeah, you could be. If you live in Idaho and you listen to the podcast, you live in Nebraska, Utah, Wisconsin, Michigan. Well, pretty much the rest of the United States.
We were just in Louisiana. We met some people there who listened to the podcast. It was so cold. Come to California.
Come to Southern California in February. You will thank us. You will thank us. But it'll also give you an opportunity to come to the Maven Conference on Saturday, February 22nd. And we have people who do travel in for the conference every single year because it is a good event. Look, the podcast is great. The podcast is fantastic. It's life-changing for some of you. I know that, okay? But being live in person together is a whole new level. And we have a great lineup. We put a lot of effort and work and thought into the conference theme every year. This year's theme is Truth and Courage. Really looking at the idea that we continue to need to know truth, know what it is that we believe, know the Christian worldview, know biblical truth, and then develop the courage to engage the world and the ideas of this world, and particularly for the sake of the next generation and raising the next generation. And so this year, we have 4 great main sessions. One is going to be led by Erin, who wrote the book Life in the Negative World, and what it means to, be in a anti-Christian culture and kind of giving us some bearings about where we're at culturally at this moment. And then we're going to deal with 2 of what we take to be the biggest challenges, worldview challenges to the Christian faith and to our culture, to our society. The 2 ideas are expressive individualism. This is the authority of the self, the autonomy of the self, and how that has permeated so many aspects of our life. It's just the water that we're swimming in. It affects our parenting, government, education, how we see ourselves, relationships. It's so pervasive, and we've got to untangle from expressive individualism. And then the second big idea is critical theory. And that, again, has affected every institution, every corner of our society. So how do we deal with that one? And then how do we help our kids and our grandkids navigate that? And then we'll also talk about in the 4th main session, all right, how do we cultivate courage so that we do speak up on these things, that we are involved in the culture, in being activists for the truth, and then also having the courage to just address it in our personal lives. So, and then we've got 2 sets of breakout sessions.
Yeah, the breakout sessions, we have different tracks. So we have a student track for the students that are at the conference. Every year, more and more students are at the Maven conference. We love that. So we have a track for students. We have a track for parents. I'm going to be teaching on the parent track and talking about gentle parenting, talk about not enabling our kids, how to stop doing everything for our kids. We have tracks for theology tracks.
A theology track, a science track for the California conference. We have a culture track. We'll be covering just a number of pressing issues and giving us, ways to think biblically about this stuff, but then also very practical ways to engage.
So come to the Maven conference. Go to mavenconferences.com. You can get your ticket there and find out all the details for coming out to California for the first Maven conference of 2025.
Yeah. Now, let's say you're not able to make it for, some reason. It's got to be a really good reason, though. Like, you're on your deathbed or something like that. There are two other options. Texas, but that's not till September. It's Saturday, September the 6th. And then in November, we're going to be in Indianapolis for our first Maven conference in that area. And that's going to be Saturday, November the 8th. So there will be two more Maven conferences coming, but they're a long ways off. So you don't want to miss California. So hopefully we'll see you in California for that conference.
So go to mavenconferences.com. All the dates for all of our conferences this year are there.
Okay, honey, as we talk about dating, let's first discuss how our parents arranged our marriage. Because we didn't do the dating thing. And so...
Yeah. I don't think our parents would have arranged our marriage.
Oh, we didn't have an arranged marriage?
No.
Oh, no, that's right. We dated in a very traditional kind of American way. And then you fell in love with me and we got married.
Actually, I was going to say, why don't you tell people, because so many listeners must be wondering, how did that guy talk her into marrying him? Because what she has to go through just on the podcast, it makes people wonder, honey. They're like, what did that guy do to talk her into it? So why don't you tell everyone how you twisted my arm and coaxed me?
Well, as my good friend John Stone Street says, you outkicked your punt coverage.
I did?
No, I did.
Oh.
Meaning...
He's told you that.
Meaning I married way up. So, yeah, okay, so it...
So how'd you do it, Brett?
It started with a look. It started with me looking at you. I saw you. Okay, so we were undergrad students in college, and we were at a Christian college, and I
was a new student.
You were a new student. I had seen you at the beginning of the semester, and I just thought, wow, she is beautiful. And the great thing about our Christian college was, you were required to have a Christian testimony. So you kind of assumed everyone was a believer. Not everyone obviously was, but you didn't have to worry about, at least, for me as a Christian young man, one of my standards was I'm only dating believers, right? And so I assumed you were a believer and you were a very attractive believer. And I thought, I felt the Lord telling me, you should get to know her.
You liar.
Okay, maybe that wasn't the Lord. Maybe it was just the natural attraction. But I had seen you and just thought, oh, she's really gorgeous, and I really should get to know her. And just encourage this young Christian sister of mine. So anyway, our floor, I was living in the dorms, and our floor would do these kind of group activities where you'd get your roommate a date kind of thing, and
the whole floor would
do that, and it was just a fun
activity.
So like
60 people would
fun
all
group
go
date.
Out. Yeah.
And so I told my roommate, oh, there's this really cute girl I saw. And he's like, who is she? I go, I have no clue. I don't know her name. I just saw her. I had this, there was this epiphany, this angelic being, creature.
Sure.
And he's like, well, okay, how am I going to find her? I don't know. And then we were in chapel of all places, one of our weekly
The
chapels.
Holy of Holies.
A very spiritual place.
And you were supposed to be thinking about God.
I was actually in deep prayer and meditation before the chapel service, just preparing my heart for, what the Lord had for me. And you walked in right in front of us, and my roommate happened to be sitting right next to me. And I said amen, and I looked up, and
no one believes you.
You walked in front of me, and I said, thank you, Lord. No, I told my roommate, I said, that's her. He goes, who? I go, the girl I was talking about. And he looked, and he's like, her? And he goes, yeah. Or I go, yeah. And he says, oh, I recognize her. She's in my next class after chapel. And I just saw God providentially arranging the circumstances of our life to bring us together. It really strengthened my theology of his sovereignty. But I saw you. So he said, okay, I'll go ask her after class. So then after class, he approached you and said, hey, you want to go with my roommate on this group activity? Mm-hmm. And you said, who's your roommate? And he said, oh, Brett Kunkel. And then you said, Brett Kunkel?
No, you do not. Okay, I'm jumping in here. This is not how. So your roommate came and asked me to go on this school activity. Well, I was a new student on campus, and I didn't live on campus because our story is that I was a single mom at this point. So I had a 1-year-old, and I got pregnant my senior year of high school. I had to change my college plans, went to a community college near my home and where I grew up, and had my daughter during that year. I became a Christian during my pregnancy. And then now I was wanting to grow in my knowledge of God. And I some crazy conversation happened at the junior college, and someone said Biola. And then I realized, oh, that's a Christian college that's 10 minutes from where I'm living. So I transferred there as a single mom. And so a few months into school is when this all happened. And so I had no clue what your roommate was talking about, this guy rad activity. And I didn't know who you were. I didn't know who he was. So I was like, who?
Wait, you didn't know who I was?
You're always offended when I say that part. I did not spend much time on campus. I know, honey, that you were the man on campus. And how could I possibly say that. Not? Why is that bad?
Well, I just don't want to admit that publicly.
In your mind, you are.
In my own mind.
In your mind, you're thinking, how could someone not know who I was?
In my own mind.
But
no.
Anyways, so
I just want to clarify. Okay, that's sarcasm. That's joking. I did not think I was a big man on campus. Okay.
I love that you're clarifying things like that now.
Yeah, because some people don't know me.
We hear it. We hear from people.
They don't know me well enough to know that that's a joke.
That's a joke. So anyways, I told your roommate I would think about it. And truth be told, I had no intention of going. And I had a few girlfriends by this point in school. But again, this is early on in the year. And so some of them then informed me what it was. They said, it's not really a date, even though it's called a date. They said it's a big group activity, and it's just fun way to get to know people. I had a lot of baggage with relationships. I had been hurt, and so I was not interested in dating. So even the term date, because I didn't know who it's not like I was rejecting you. It was just I had no desire to date. So anyways, your roommate ends up calling my home number, because back then we didn't have cell phones, back in the Stone Ages when we didn't have cell phones, and just left the time and place to meet. So I had a decision. I basically kind of had to go at this point, even though I was afraid to go. And so that was like on a Monday. And then Friday, I showed up for the.
It was a brilliant strategy by my roommate, by the way.
He didn't give me an out because he just left the information
message,
and he didn't leave a number to call back.
Didn't leave a callback number.
Yeah.
And so.
Because I had told him I would think about it. So he apparently didn't want to give me the option. So I showed up Friday night for this school activity. We met and we did kind of instantly hit it off. You, surprise, started teasing me. And surprise, I started teasing you back.
Yes.
And I didn't just take it.
And I fell head over heels in love when Erin could almost match my level of sarcasm. Right. I just thought, this is the woman for me.
So we, had a fun night together. Again, it was your whole floor. So there were a lot of us and it was like a big fun group date. And then at the end of the night, you walked me to my car and I hadn't had the opportunity to tell you, oh, by the way, I'm a single mom. And so that was a little hard to figure out. But then when you asked me, you walked me in my car and then you said, oh, would you want to go out again? I thought, okay, I better break the news to this guy.
By the way, throughout the night after we kind of hit it off, and then even after the official group hangout was done, us and some other couples went and did, some other fun things. And I'm thinking this whole time, oh, I really like this girl. We seem to be connecting. And I'm thinking, okay, Brett, you gotta have the courage to ask her out again, by the end of this night. So for me, it's building up. Okay, I've gotta have the courage to say, hey, you want to go out again? And so walk you to your car, kind of, the final moment, hey, will you go out with me? And so that's a big buildup for me. You're nervous as a guy to do that. And she could be like, nah, no thanks. And then you kind of dropped that bomb like, hey, I'd love to go out again, but there's something I need to tell you.
I said, there's something you should know before we go out again.
Yeah.
And I assumed this would be the end. So I just quickly said, I'm a mom. I have a daughter. I told you quickly my story of getting pregnant my senior year and all the things. And so just kind of quickly told you the story, showed you a picture of her. You looked very stunned. There were not a lot of single moms walking around our Christian college. So at the time, I thought it was the only one. I ended up during our years there meeting another gal who was a single mom as well. But so I broke the news to you and said, anyway, it was so great to meet you and, no pressure to call.
See you in the afterlife.
See you of course, because during the evening we had gotten to know each other a little bit and you had mentioned that you were a youth pastor. So I knew you were a Christian and then I find out you're in ministry. So I knew we wouldn't work at all because that single mom and youth pastor is not a good combination. So I thought, oh, this is really hilarious actually, and would never, ever work. And so that was about 30 years ago that we dated.
Yeah.
And
well, then, so after that, we ended up dating. Mm-hmm. And I guess very kind of standard dating relationship, American dating relationship. We dated for a year and a half while we were students at Biola. And then I was graduating 2 years before you, but we wanted to get married. So we got engaged my senior year and then we got married right after I graduated. Mm-hmm. So we did do the dating thing.
We did. And so that was 27 years ago that we got married. And then a few years into our marriage, you were able to adopt our oldest daughter. And then we went on to have 4 more kids. And apparently a single mom and a youth pastor can work out because it's been 27 years now, which is crazy. You're old, Kunkel. And you are 2 years older than me. You just admitted that. So that was good. So
way to get that one in. I like that one. So just to confirm, we do have experience with dating ourselves. And then we've got kids who we've tried to lead through dating. And
two married kids, 3 adult kids now. And so we've had to navigate dating ourselves, and now we've had to. And we still have 2 teenagers. So
yeah.
pray for us because we still have some dating years ahead of us.
Yes. And so the way that we have started this conversation in the prior podcast was dating starts with the larger biblical picture of marriage and family. And God's design is one man, one woman coming together for a permanent relationship to then have the next generation to raise children. In fact, think about the biblical picture of marriage. Marriage is not primarily designed for our personal self-fulfillment. Like,
ouch.
Yeah, let's pause because that's how we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we talk about it as secular Americans, and that's even how we talk about it in the Christian world. Is that, and we maybe baptize it with Christian language, but there's this orientation that, oh yeah, it's to meet your needs, it's to fulfill your desires. And now I don't want to take out any self-interest, right? I don't want to say, hey, you have to sacrifice yourself on the altar of unselfishness to find your spouse. And your spouse probably doesn't want to hear that either. Hey, it was a great act of sacrificial love for the Lord that I chose you, So, and I would say this is where we make that distinction between selfishness and self-interest. There is appropriate self-interest, right? There's appropriate love of self that God wants from us. Mm. But at the same time, in a consumeristic culture, a culture of narcissism, individualistic culture, we can simply adopt a worldview and an approach to life that says everything exists for my personal self-fulfillment. And so we'll take that right into relationships. The biblical worldview corrects us. Mm. And that's the starting point. Biblical picture, God brings men and women together in a permanent relationship so that we can live out his design. Mm. And now there are so many goods that come from it. It is in our best self-interest because it's not merely about our happiness. It is also about our holiness. And now again, but our happiness isn't something we throw out. Mm-hmm. There are appropriate self-interests. And so, but that's the larger framework. So dating fits into that. So then that tells us in kind of our modern world, okay, for the Christian, we want to look at dating as not merely okay, this is going to be obvious, but dating for the Christian isn't simply to hook up sexually with other people. Dating isn't just for mere companionship for a time. For us, it seems like the purpose of dating has to do with this larger biblical framework of finding a spouse for life.
Okay, so let me jump in here. And on the last episode, we talked about this framework of dating and talking to our kids about different cultures who do this dating thing differently, if they do dating at all. And I'm just thinking about what you're saying, how we have to bring in the Christian worldview so that we don't see marriage as this really selfish thing or this thing that's it kind of the Disney princess, like this is about living happily ever after. Not that Disney's the only one but this fairy tale, but this is all about love in the warm, affectionate sense of love and about romance. But marriage is actually a much deeper thing as it's described biblically. But I wonder how much our culture's view on dating make that more difficult.
Yeah.
The biblical view, because like you said, I mean, you saw me and you were being silly about it. But okay, so you saw me and you were attracted. Like, but and a lot of dating and we're going to talk about dating apps and things like that are so popular now. It's so much of it is about physical attraction.
Yeah.
And that's kind of course, for us, that maybe that's where it started. Like, oh, we're attracted to each other, but it becomes deeper than that. But how much of that, even the initial stuff, it's so hard to get a biblical worldview about it because our culture is oriented so much that it's about me, and it's about me feeling warm and fuzzy about you. And so then we're trying to help our kids to see no, marriage is so much bigger than that. And that is so hard to push against that.
Well, I think what you're getting at is that our cultural forms are not neutral, right? So they can be more helpful or less helpful in pursuing biblical ends. And this is where so many good things or things or even neutral things can be taken and just taken in the wrong direction. So, for instance, attraction. Like it seems to me, attraction is it's God designed, right? Where you see someone of the opposite sex, and there's an attraction there that kind of pulls you towards that person in order to do what God said to do: become a family, get married, leave and cleave, right? And attraction is that first step where that attraction, it draws you to the person or not, I guess the gender you should be drawn to. And so, but then you can also see how you can take attraction and go off the rails with it, where that's the only thing. And if that's the only thing, or that's the primary thing, that's too shallow for the weight of this relationship, right? That can't sustain this kind of relationship. So that's just a first step. And so you could see how modern American dating can actually make it more difficult to carry out biblical purposes. Whereas you could make the argument, arranged marriages, even though that's not perfect, it might be more compatible or more helpful. And this is like a radical statement in 21st century America, but it could be more conducive to the biblical pattern of permanence, commitment. Love is not just a feeling, it's a commitment. And so when there's an arranged marriage, it's not built on romance, attractiveness, feelings. It's much more, it seems, oriented towards the commitment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is exactly what I was thinking, that you think of cultures where a marriage is about the parents choosing it and, using their wisdom on what would be the best. Now, we are not arguing for this, but my point simply is that the orientation of the person's heart and thought would be different. You certainly, in a culture like that, wouldn't come at it as this is all about my personal happiness and warm, fuzzy feelings.
Yeah. Although, and this is where we would see brokenness in every kind of methodology.
If you're thinking about one of our family members who had an arranged marriage on your side of the family.
Oh, yeah.
Was terrible. So we're not advocating for this. And human brokenness plays into all the ways we do culture as humans.
We wouldn't even want to say it like arranged marriages are just out, they're led by parental wisdom. Fallen parents who want an advantage in life will maybe marry their kid for personal advantage kind of thing. So it's all messy. A mess. It's all broken. Let's close in prayer, shall we? Because this is just hopeless.
So
no, okay, it's not hopeless.
It's not hopeless. And just to think about our culture orienting us a certain way is so important. And just thinking about that.
Because you're going to have to say those kind of things to your kids.
Yeah.
Because, okay, we're going to list maybe a number of practical things that we can do, things that we need to talk about for dating. Okay. And we're not trying to make this more complicated, but it's just, all right, let's think kind of holistically and comprehensively and biblically about this issue of dating. And so I think the very first thing that we want to say is talk about the purpose of dating with your kids and help your kids understand from earliest of ages that dating has a purpose. And for us as Christians, the purpose of modern dating would be to find a spouse, to find uh, someone who you will leave, mom and dad, and you will cleave, and you will become one flesh, and that will be a permanent union that, you know, by God's grace, you will live out for the rest of your life. Okay. Now we have to have that conversation kind of over and over and over again. As you said in the last podcast, this is not one talk. There's not one dating talk, one sex talk. It is an ongoing conversation.
It's a long road that you just slowly walk along.
Yeah. And our kids are surrounded by a secular culture that will orient them in all kinds of wrong ways. So that's why we have to keep repeating the message. Hey, dating is for the purpose ultimately of marriage, finding a spouse. So that's the first thing, is talk about dating and talk about its purpose.
Because they will not hear this from any other area except from you. Hopefully your church, and if your church has a youth group and they go to hopefully other adults, Christian adults, are saying this to them, but the culture will not ever broach the subject of dating as this is important for you to use this time to get to know this person so you can make a well-informed decision about marriage. There's no connection there. If you read teen magazines, and I was doing a search online about advice for teens on date. No, nothing connects dating with marriage. It's just dating is for your enjoyment, your fulfillment, all of these things. So it'll give teens advice on that sort of thing. So we will most likely be one of the only voices that's connecting it for him. And so we need to do it a lot.
Yeah. So that's the first step, is talk about the purpose of dating, connect it back to marriage. I think then number two, you've got, and you alluded to this, Erin, but we've got to prepare them to be countercultural, because the messages of the culture will mitigate against this all the time. And we have got to help our kids become comfortable with the fact that Christian families are going to look different than a non-Christian culture. We have got to be comfortable with that. And so when it comes to dating, we should look different than the world around us. Even in I mean, there's a little part of me that's uncomfortable with the idea, maybe not just a little part, but I'm uncomfortable with the idea of simply kind of dating to, get the best candidate in front of me, or just I date so I can see this person, and whether or not I'll okay, now I'm going to choose them, right? Like, you meet the criteria. There's a sense where maybe for Christians, you don't date to get to know somebody, right? You get to know somebody first and find out about that person. It seems just like wisdom that there's maybe a friendship. And then this doesn't even fit with our story.
Yeah, you hypocrite.
This is not how we did it. And this is where when I was, 20 years old, I wasn't as wise as I am now. Okay. And so maybe what I would have done in that situation is I would have said, let me get to know this sister in Christ.
Really? But really you think back, because I think so in our story, sometimes you meet and dating is, and okay, so this is where defining dating is important, because I know, like, our parents' generation, dating was to get to know the person. That's how you got to know them.
Yes. Okay. So you're right, Erin. Defining what we mean by dating is so important.
Yes.
Because it was, hey, you go out on dates to get to know somebody, whereas now it seems more equated with boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yes. It's instantly like your boyfriend, girlfriend. And so now it's all about the relationship. And so there's so much pressure often right away. And I don't mean just physical pressure, but pressure to like, oh, I'm connected with this person.
I'm in this
now.
exclusive relationship
Yeah.
with this person. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I think there's a general sense of dating where dating is kind of pairing up for, romantic purposes or something like that. Of course, we're going to hone that in. The Christian view would be it's pairing up for romantic purposes, ultimately, to marry someone. And it used to be that dating, you could date multiple people.
Mhm.
You could go out on dates.
Mhm.
So in that sense, I'm dating 3 or 4 or 5 people. I go out on a date.
Mhm.
That's a pretty foreign concept to a lot of our kids
Yeah.
now, because we've had that conversation with our kids.
Yeah, well, the activity we went on at Biola together where we hit it off, these activities, I never lived on campus, but you guys did these all throughout the year, meaning the school, not just your dorm. And so these guy rads, get your roommate a date, was happening throughout the year, and people would go with different people all the time. So there was just kind of this culture of encouraging get to know people, and dating was a part of that. It wasn't this exclusive thing until you actually made it an exclusive
Yeah.
thing or whatever.
And back in that day, so I'd taken some other girls out on dates, and we went out a couple times, and then we just didn't go out on another date. And that was
there wasn't like a
okay.
big breakup.
Yeah, there was
that
no
happened.
breakup.
Yeah.
There was no commitment.
Yeah. So that's totally foreign today.
And yeah, so that it does seem maybe pretty foreign.
It is.
Um,
So in light of that, what dating is today or relationships, would you say the purpose of it is to get to know somebody?
well, so then maybe what we would say is, look, if dating has moved,
It has moved, no
right?
question.
Okay, so right.
Quit arguing with
I'm
me.
not arguing. If dating has moved, which you would answer in the affirmative, okay, and I would agree with you, but then we might think, okay, then before dating, before you jump into this exclusive boyfriend girlfriend relationship, there would be some period then of getting to know that person where that commitment, that exclusivity is not there.
Well, and so what our kids would have told us is that's basically impossible.
To just be friends?
No, you have your friends, but then once you're kind of dating someone, there is this exclusiveness immediately.
Right. Well, so that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. So there's this exclusiveness that didn't used to be. And so then we want them to see, okay, if it is exclusive, you can't get out of it. That's just how culture is. We want them, though, to view that time not as, and now you're committed for life, but okay, so use this exclusive time as a time to get to know the person.
Well, I would say, hopefully, you know the person before you enter into that
That's
exclusivity.
ideal. That the friendship is first, because then you get to know, you already know them.
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't say it's ideal. What I want to communicate to the kids is that's necessary. Don't enter into an exclusive dating relationship with someone that you just know nothing about.
So don't do what we did.
I would advise our kids not to do what we did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize that. So you think we made a big mistake?
We're having a moment. No, we didn't. I don't think we made a big mistake. Now, I think, okay, so I think for you and for me, in fact, this is one of the things that attracted me to you on our first date. Like we didn't know each other at all. There was just, for me, there was physical attraction. And again, we know that's not enough to sustain a relationship. Now, we didn't start dating. We didn't jump right into the exclusivity. Like our first date was getting to know each other. So that would just be, I would say, I guess what would probably be happening in modern terms is that wasn't dating. we went out together on a group activity. We were hanging out,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And we were getting to know each other. And that first night, we got to know each other, fairly well. There were some things one of the things, I mean, we talked about this, the sarcasm, and we, similar
That was
sense
clear
of humor.
immediately.
That was a deep sarcastic connection that night.
Immediately.
But the other thing that really drew me to you and was very attractive was, I think I could tell there was a depth of maturity and character, which of course, when you're a single mom, you grow up.
Mm-hmm.
But I could just see that maturity in you. And I had been in ministry for a number of years at that point as a young college student, and that just grew me up being responsible in a ministry leadership position. So that was good. And so I think there was some maturity that we both brought that was attractive. That when we got to know that from the start with each other, and then, I mean, then after that first date, the following Monday, we went out and sat in a park and shared our testimonies with each other for 5-6 hours of just talking. So we were getting to know each other. We wouldn't have said, hey, we're now in an exclusive dating relationship. So there was some of us getting to know each other. Now, we did get into an exclusive dating relationship not long after that, but we also were getting to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably would be, I would say, look, it would have been ideal for us to have more time to get to know each other before we entered into that. I don't want to, I'm not saying we did it wrong, honey.
No, and well, I'm thinking not only of our story, but
lots of people's
our son
stories.
who's married met his now wife, and they started dating, and that's how they got to know each other. So this
is a mess.
You're a
we
mess.
can't offer any advice to any parents out there.
It's messy, of
It is
course,
messy.
because it's human relationship.
There is ideal. There's ideal. And that's why I said, I think it would be ideal. And I'm not saying I would prohibit, like kind of what we did. But again, just it would be more ideal if there was a context where there wasn't this exclusive pressure.
Yeah.
There wasn't romance involved, because we all know that you can easily lose rationality when romance gets in there, right? I mean, Erin, you can admit that. Like, once romance got in, you lost all rationality.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so maybe we disagree then, or maybe we agree, but I think, what I've always said to our kids is part of dating is getting to know the other person. It's seeing them with their family.
In the old model.
Yes.
In the old model of dating?
Well,
or you're talking about in the new model of dating. So let's call it, maybe let's call it 80s dating.
No.
And 2020s dating.
I think if the purpose of dating is to find a spouse, then it's okay to say that during the dating period, you are like, I agree with you. It's not like, hey, I have my list, and so I'm going to see if this person checks all the boxes. And we know young people who have talked that way about, I'm thinking about one girl in particular that we had a conversation with about marriage, and
Jenny?
she had the,
Jenny, is that
oh
who you're
my
talking
word,
about?
Stop. It was not her name, but where she had, do you remember? She had this checklist, and at first I thought, oh, it's like he's a Christian, that he takes his faith seriously. But no, this was a checklist of some very specific things. And I thought, oh girl, I thought it was so unwise. And then it ends up that she is married now and has a wonderful husband, but she realized her checklist was very self-centered and it had kind of all these things on it. So I agree, like not having that, but seeing your dating time as you are kind of testing the waters of, could we do life together?
Yeah. Well,
and so go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't think we're disagreeing. I think maybe we're saying, look, there could be an initial period of that beforehand, because if you have like two strangers who just come together into that exclusive dating relationship to say, okay, let's see if, well, you got to just get to know the person at first.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be things right off the bat. You're like, no, this is, there are character issues here, or there are some major compatibility issues here. I'm saying, yes, dating in either the old sense or the more modern sense is still a process of exploring.
Mm-hmm.
But that process can be enhanced or helped by a period of time where you get to know the person without the dating part.
Yeah.
No matter what methodology you're using. So it's like, hey, there are kids in your other students in your youth group or in your friend group who hang out and who socialize. There's getting to know a person that way, seeing them in social interactions, seeing them at church, seeing them on a mission trip, seeing them serve in ministry.
Yes.
Where you're getting to know somebody, and then because that right there can help you know whether or not you think that's someone that could be a future spouse.
As parents, we face so many challenges when it comes to raising our kids today. Challenges with how to discipline, how to navigate technology, how to think through all the gender issues in the culture. Issue after issue after issue we are bombarded with, and there is sometimes a lack of biblical wisdom that we receive and really need in this time and place as parents.
And that is why we do the Maven Parent Podcast, why it's an important part of the ministry work that Maven does. We want to be a resource, a weekly resource of mentoring, coaching, encouraging, inspiring you with biblical wisdom. And the only way that this happens is through the regular support of folks like you. If you are a regular listener to the Maven Parent Podcast, we want to challenge you to become part of our team of monthly donors. In fact, this month, our goal is to raise from our podcast listeners 100 new monthly supporters. And let me encourage you, don't wait to the end of the month to make that commitment. We want to be seeing progress throughout the month so that we can say by the end of this month, hey, we're almost there. We need some more supporters. We want you to join us now. So would you take action, support the work of Maven, support the Maven Parent Podcast as a great resource of biblical wisdom for parents in the modern age. To become a monthly supporter, go to our website, maventruth.com, and click on the donate button in the right-hand corner, or click on the link in the show notes. Okay, we are not making much progress through this list of practical things here.
People are seeing us work out our conflict.
Well, no, we're not working out conflict.
I know, I'm teasing, but we're wrestling through even how we talk about it with our kids and think about it. And then, of course, the example that we've laid for.
Well, and hopefully I think it does help people to see, like, this is not an easy topic.
I think parents know that. I think we feel it whether you have a 5-year-old or not. You're thinking this is going to be difficult. And if you're in it right now and you're thinking this is difficult, yes, it is, because human relationship is complicated.
Yeah, and there's a lot at stake, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so if you're feeling that, good. Feel the weight of it. Feel the weight. Pulling you down. But this is the kind of thing that we as parents and couples, we have to do this. Mm-hmm. And if you're a single parent, it's good to have somebody, a good friend, a wise mentor, a pastor, a leader, somebody to bounce this kind of thing off of.
Yes.
All right. So, okay. So then number 3. So talk about the purpose of dating, prepare them to be countercultural, get them used to the idea that we're different. We're different. We're going to approach this differently.
And that should be in so many areas of life that your kids are used to you saying, we do it differently.
Yeah. And so then number 3, talk to them about waiting to date. Okay. So again, if the purpose is not merely companionship, it's not just because everyone else is, doing this. It's not just to have a boyfriend or girlfriend so that you can feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. But the purpose is to find a spouse. Then it might just be a step of wisdom to say, let's wait. Let's wait till there's some maturity. So, hey, when you're 12 and 13 years of age, we're not gonna do dating yet. We're gonna wait because we know that between 13 and whatever age limit we set, there's going to be a growth in wisdom and perspective. I mean, what you want when you're 12 and 13 will change radically when you're even 15 or 16, and it changes from 16 to 19 and 20.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some wisdom in waiting for some maturity. And again, I think that's a little bit unique to our culture. We have this extended adolescence, which is not good. There are other cultures where, hey, at 12, you became an adult and, you're, by 14, 15, 16, you're getting married kind of thing, right? Biblical times.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not our culture. Our culture doesn't grow us up well. And so there may be wisdom in saying, let's wait.
And I think it's important to say, and what we have said to our kids, even if we're saying you're not ready to date, what we're not saying is you can't like other, son, you can't like girls. That doesn't mean just us saying you can't date right now. You're not old enough to date because you're not close to marriage age. But of course you're going to like girls, and that's fine. And we're totally fine with that. We know it's going to happen.
It's fine
because we can talk about that.
It's fine because that's God's design.
Yeah, it's natural and it's good.
Your attraction to other, people of the opposite sex, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure we talk about it in positive ways. Okay, so talk to them about waiting to date, and then you just kind of have to work this out in your family if you have kind of an age. For us, it was 16. That's the standard we had set because we thought it gets them to a point where there's some maturity that happens there. You get your driver's license, so there's an ability to maybe be able to drive. That's a practical concern. But 16 was where we kind of said, okay, the door is now open to the potential for dating. And again, it was wisdom.
And although we have always prefaced those conversations with, is dating in high school a high priority? And so we've had lots of conversations with our kids of the vast majority of people don't marry their high school sweetheart. It's very rare. Now, 2 of my 3 sisters married their high school sweetheart. So I know it happens, but it is rare. And so we'll say to the kids, well, why do you think that is? Because you change a lot after high school. So do people in high school date? Of course. Is this normal? Yes. But is dating exclusively in high school a good idea? It might not.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Like
I would say no.
Yeah, and we've shared our stories of dating in high school and how it wasn't something that ended up being good for us in a lot of ways or whatever. So even though we did have the 16, we did have conversations about, is dating in high school good? Yeah. And we didn't come down hard on either side, but at least even getting them thinking about, oh yeah, most people we know didn't marry the people they dated in high school. Why is that? That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, because a lot of in relationships in high school end up in flames, frankly.
Yeah. And there are pitfalls, especially in a pornified culture,
yes,
a sexually explicit culture. There's going to be lots of pressure and temptation to get sexually active.
Mm-hmm. Once you're in exclusive relationships.
Yeah. And man, that's weighty. That's a big time temptation and struggle and tons of, big consequences on that.
Yeah.
So,
practically we're going to talk about some of that stuff in another podcast, the apps and some of this different stuff about and pornography and all of this stuff, how this it has changed dating as well.
Yeah. Okay. So another step of wisdom, practical step could be taking your kids out on dates when they're young. And so dads with their daughters and moms with their sons. And number one, it just gives you great one-on-one time with each kid, but it's a way to kind of model for your kids some of the appropriate things in dating. For instance, as a dad, and I take my girls out on dates, it's a chance to model for them how to be treated properly, how a gentleman, takes you to dinner and, does the things, whether it's open the door for you or kind of defer to you or, have you go first or, just practicing manners, those kind of things, all those things to just help uh, create moments where my daughters get to see how they should be treated, how a gentleman does treat them. And it's just one small step for preparing them to have a standard that they can measure other relationships by. And then, so there's, I think those dates can kind of provide that. Also, the marriage relationship can provide that, so a kid sees how mom and dad treat each other. And then they realize, oh, that's a standard. And so now if a boyfriend or girlfriend doesn't treat me like that, or a boyfriend doesn't treat me like my dad treated me when he took me on dates, okay, then I've got a standard by which to say, oh, that doesn't meet up to, I think, these proper standards, these standards of right conduct,
Yeah. I think that, of course, the modeling with them, so taking them out on dates, of course, paints a picture of this is kind of what it looks like or should look like.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the modeling big time which is why in the last podcast we talked about working on your own marriage if you're married. And because that's bigger than anything going to paint a picture of this is how a relationship functions, and keeping it anonymous with who said this with our 5 kids, but one of our kids said after an interaction with, well, I guess I'll say one of our girls, after interaction with a boy, she said to us that she said, Dad would never talk to you that way. And that the way that boy talked to her was repulsive because, and she just said, Dad would never talk to you that way. And that for her would like just that modeling that we had laid all these years that you don't even realize you're doing had done enough for her that when a boy talked to her that way, she was like, that is gross. That is not what I want.
That's wrong.
Yeah. So much of this is, of course, our modeling.
Yeah. And so this is where and it's just so much fun when the kids are young, but to then continue that when they're in middle school, and even in high school as well as preparation. So that's just a practical thing you can do. I think another very practical thing is put dating within the larger family context. So that means, hey, even if your daughter has a boyfriend or your son has a girlfriend, it's not that everything they do is exclusively just the two of them alone by themselves kind of thing, separate from the family. I think a health, this is the American overly individualistic autonomous approach.
Yeah, the relationship is just about the two of you instead of, oh no, this person is connected to a bigger family. And hi, we're the family that this person's connected to. And so if you want to date, you're going to be over here a part of the family because that's just...
Yeah, because if this thing does move to marriage, then you will be part of the family, right? And so, I mean, some practical things about this. It could be, number one, hey, when your kid goes on their first date, celebrate it as a family. Like, I can just imagine some kids like, oh my gosh, no way, I don't want my parents to do that. But like when they come home from that first date, the family's around the kitchen table and you celebrate it and make it a good thing and say, tell us about it kind of thing,
Yeah.
where it's just connecting that whole relationship back to the family.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds
it's
of
showing-
other, I mean, let me say one thing.
Okay.
There's benefits to this as well,
yeah.
like accountability, things like that.
But and I was going to say it's building connection. It's showing your child that you care about what they care about. And so when they're dating someone, it's like you want to know the person too because they care about this person, so you want to know them too. This was a harder thing for me to do. I remember with one of our girls, and she was wanting to date, this boy was showing interest, they're wanting to date, and you said, well, have him come over for dinner. And my first thought was, I don't want him to come over for dinner. And I said that to you later, and you're like, honey, we want him to come over. I'm like, yes, okay, yes. So it's been a challenge for me, but we want them to, of course, with their friends and then who they're dating, we want them to feel like, I like what you like, or I'm interested in what you're interested in. So let me be a part of it too.
Yeah. And then just the practical consideration of I'm a older, wiser person, and I might be able to see things you can't see. And as a dad, I have a protective role with my girls.
Yeah.
If you're dating a bad guy, I want to know,
Yeah.
So there's that aspect as well, but it's also then a chance to celebrate it. And let's make it a good thing. It doesn't always have to be a stressful thing, and to celebrate someone's first date. That can be fun.
Yeah.
And we celebrate it because it's, again, if it fits with the purposes of a biblical view on things, then it's something that is good.
And we want to communicate over and over again that we're all in this together kind of thing. Yes, it's your relation, but we're all in this together. And so we want you to talk to us about the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And so yes, I think that some people would think that's so weird, but this is how you foster conversation is you say, oh, how did it go? Tell me about it. Or where are you guys going to go tonight? These sorts of conversation is what helps to open the door to the more serious conversations you want to have.
Yeah. And look, you'll have to constantly battle your kids thinking it's weird. And that's where you say, it's okay. We're going to be weird. Christians should look weird in this world.
Well, and the good thing, if you have as many kids as we do, you start doing it with the first two and the other ones think it's normal.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It just works out great. So
You create a culture in your family.
Another argument for having a bunch of kids because you lay a foundation and then this does just become normal.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple more real practical ideas under this larger point of making it, kind of bringing it into this larger family context might be, hey, how about doing a double date with your kid and their boyfriend or girlfriend? Do some double dates where you go out to dinner and you treat them out and take them out to dinner and hang out together. Yep. Or there's family activities. Every date or every time, the young couple is together doesn't mean they have to go off by themselves.
No.
Sometimes it's, hey, we're going to hang out and watch the football. We're going to watch the Steelers game together. And we're going to, as a family, we're going to, I don't know, play board games or whatever it might be. We're going to go out we're going to go out in the river and any kind of those family activities, have the date or boyfriend, girlfriend hang out with the family. And that's just that provides a healthier context than this constant exclusivity, being alone all the time together, creating opportunities for all kinds of temptation. But then it also allows the family to get to know them, to give, some guidance there. So kind of making it, kind of bringing the family in on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're going to hit rules, some specific rules that we've had. And then the idea of dating apps, we're going to hit that in the next one.
The challenge of navigating that.
Yeah, because those are two pretty big topics. I would say, just to close this off, so this is kind of part one of practically how do you work out dating. I would say in all of this whole discussion, we are going to have to be prepared to pick up pieces, to deal with mistakes and failures and sin, because we see the, sexual brokenness, relational brokenness all around us. It's going to affect our kids. We have 5 kids. We've seen it with our kids. And we're going to have to be there to help pick up pieces to remind them of Jesus, remind them of their salvation, their redemption, their forgiveness, remind them that in the brokenness, there is the potential for restoration, that God can redeem broken circumstances. We're going to, in this, need to be prepared to share the gospel, speak the gospel truth to them, remind them of the gospel, walk through some dark times with them, walk through the hurt and pain with them. That is just a part of this.
Yeah, which I think, as I say, is one of the hardest things you'll go through as a parent. But I think setting your expectations that they will struggle in relationships is something you just have to do. And setting your expectations for it is better than thinking you're going to navigate this perfectly. They're going to navigate it perfectly. They're going to meet Prince Charming. Everything's going to go great. It's going to be bumpy and it's going to be at times heartbreaking, but we want to continually point our kids to Christ. And we're going to be sometimes have the opportunity to be the shoulder that our kids cry on. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. And if you think about it, for most of us, it was filled with messes and failures and mistakes.
Yeah.
And we needed the gospel just as much. Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. Through your generous financial partnership with Maven, you are having an impact on the lives of students and families across the country. To become a monthly partner, visit maventruth.com and click on the donate button.